Dun dun dun, he's going rogue!
Welcome to Going Rogue. After we saw Noah, we just thought to ourselves that there was a lot of things that we wanted to talk about. So instead of putting it all in our review and just making that super long, we're going to have a video here where we're just going to talk about things. So, spoiler alert. Trent, first of all, what did you think about the movie?
I actually really liked it. I really enjoyed myself. In fact, in the table discussion, I gave it 3 stars, even though that wasn't like the consensus. I thought going into it, it wasn't what I expected at all, and I almost immediately found myself. We ended up going late to the showing, and almost immediately I was dragged into the story. So.
There was a lot of controversy around this movie. What are your thoughts on some of it? I don't know. I guess we should probably list some of it. So one of the controversies is that the director is atheist. He's not a Christian. He's not Jewish or anything. He doesn't believe in God. But he made a religious movie. But shouldn't somebody who is religious, who maybe appreciate the spirituality of the story of Noah, be at the helm of it?
You know what? I would say yes, but there are plenty of movies that are by Christian directors that portray their side of the story. And I think the issue is it's only 3 chapters in Genesis, and there's so much interpretation, and there's a lot of tradition about our belief that is really based on your religion. What really bothers me is that Christians think that they are the only people who have the right to tell the story of Noah.
And it's not. It's so many different people.
Exactly. So when you get up and up, when you say shouldn't it be a Christian who tells the story? You know what? Yes, but there are plenty of stories. If you want that, there are plenty of people. There are plenty of Christians who have told the story through film, and there's plenty of Jewish interpretations. It's no matter who tells the story, it will always be biased in some way. And so, especially when it comes to religion, because we really are not feeling we're defending the story, we feel like we're defending a part of our belief. And so maybe somebody who is not coming from a religious standpoint, somebody who doesn't really, he does have an inherent bias because of atheist, but he doesn't have a religious bias, could tell a religious story in a new light.
Yeah, no, I really like the research that he put into this movie, because he actually, from an atheist perspective, wasn't really tied down to one specific interpretation of the story. He could say it any way that he wanted, and he could synthesize so many different thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
And there was just a lot of research done in this movie and thought put into it. And I didn't feel that it was anti-God at all. I mean, there are people who are upset with the idea that that they never say God. They never say God, they say creator, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, it's one of those things is where we get offended at Islamic people for saying Allah, but that's their word for God. It's like getting offended at Spanish people for saying Dios. It's like, oh, well, it's not my God because you call him Dios. No, it's God. It's still God. Like, it's just the same name. And even God itself is we don't even know if that's his real name. Like, it could just be a title for something that we've lost. Like, it's, so when people get up in arms, I served with a lot of the Native American community, and when they talk about Christ, they don't say Christ. I very rarely hear them ever say Jesus Christ. I always hear them say Creator, because it's one of his titles. I really don't feel like that's a valid. I feel like that's one of those things that's like, he's an atheist, he just wants to take God out of it. But coming back from the movie, like that, it was very God friendly.
Yeah,
it was very much.
If anybody has the criticism against it, saying, "Oh, well, he took God out of it," that is a completely invalid criticism, because God is all a part of the movie. And the thing that I liked about it was that he brought in that God was not just some omnipotent being that people didn't understand. They had a hard time understanding him in the movie, but he was still their father.
Yeah,
like there was a relationship, there was a kinship there that they spoke about in the movie that you don't get in any other Christian movie. I mean, you watch 10 Commandments, great movie, but you never feel like, oh, God's my dad too.
Yeah. And you know what? I actually think a lot of the Christian world has a problem with that portrayal of God, because they don't see him as, he's your father or whatever.
Yeah.
He's God. He's this unknowable being. But I really don't feel like, I feel like all of the concerns and all the controversy around this movie comes from ignorance, comes from absolute ignorance of the movie, the storyline, how it's portrayed.
You're saying some really hateful stuff.
No, I believe this, and especially after seeing this movie, I was willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But after seeing this movie, I believe that it is all from ignorance.
Yeah.
You see, and I think the where it comes from though is not just there is a large Christian community and religious community who's backlashing against this movie because it does take some big liberties. I mean, there's the Watchers who are these elemental rock creatures and stuff like that. But I think it's Glenn Beck. He gave this 10-minute rant that you should check out because it's actually pretty funny. It talks about how ridiculous this movie is and how it is just offensive on every level, and it is not even well made. He said that halfway through the movie, he and his friends just got on their phones and just played on their phones the whole time because it was just a ridiculous movie. There was nothing to hold them in, and I don't know. I feel like that has been influencing a lot of people's thoughts, and people don't realize things like Watchers and Nephilim and angels were part of these stories. Like they think, oh, it's so ridiculous because in the movie there's these rock elemental creatures that help Noah, and it's cool for one thing. I mean, it's just pretty cool. But I mean, there's a lot of symbolism there. But also, people think that's ridiculous. I mean, only 2 chapters ahead before the story of Noah, there's flying babies with a flaming sword protecting a tree. I mean, and then later on, God asks one of his prophets, Abraham, to kill his son. I mean, there's crazy stuff in the Old Testament. I think the issue is that people have forgotten what the Old Testament is actually like. It is not all gumdrops and sunflowers like the Old Testament or the New Testament seems to come off. Even though the New Testament is actually pretty harsh. When we think about religious stuff that come from the Bible, we think of these flowery stories
About like Sermon on the Mount, and
we don't.
Paul's journeys and like maybe Revelations, but you never really think of like David, hitting a guy with a stone and then cutting his head off in front of hundreds of people.
And I liked in this movie that at the very end, Noah's a drunkard in the Bible, and he gets drunk all the time afterwards for the rest of his days. And a lot of people will say, oh, it's because they didn't know about alcohol back then, and they discovered this and that. But I really think that, and the movie kind of portrayed this. Part of it was that's a traumatizing experience. The whole world just died.
Yeah.
And here Noah's trying to deal with that, and I thought that brought a great human element to that. And that was great about this movie, is that what we miss from the Bible is that there is no real humanity in it.
What is wasn't that some of the controversy that Noah was too human? That one also.
Well, I think it was that because Noah made some interesting choices and was ultimately in charge of the destiny of mankind in this movie. It wasn't just that God told him what to do. And I don't know, for I guess it comes back to the question of free agency with being guided by God, free agency by yourself, or predestination. And here in this movie, you had an example of free will without the consideration of God in the case of the bad guy, Tubal Cain, played by Ray Winestone. I mean, you got free will with the bad guy, and how he just tries to describe it. And then you got free will with Noah, and he's guided by his emotions and his spirituality.
And what he believes to be right.
Yeah,
like that,
and I think people have some big complaints about that because that's different. And and then Noah wasn't perfect in this movie. Noah was a complicated character, which I think people forget too, that he wasn't considered a good guy until the New Testament came around.
I think you hear a lot of these stories in Sunday school, and you kind of believe that Noah built an arky, and that's all you really believe about that character, and it doesn't seem, in fact, out of really all of the Testaments, the only really human person in either book. I mean, Jesus Christ was perfect, but like the really only human person was Peter and Moses. Those are the only ones that really focus on how fault. But when you have these Sunday school depictions of characters, you forget that this, the Bible isn't just like it's not just recording God's. It's the Bible is God's dealings with human beings, and they're full of problems and they're full of issues and with Noah, and you know what, this movie did really good about picturing what it would be like afterwards to live with that kind of burden that you sat there and you realize you watch everyone. It's not just people. It's not just faceless people. Noah knew these people. Noah could probably knows how he's related to a lot of them. He probably knows that that's his cousin because it's only been 9 or 10 generations since Adam.
Yeah.
And it's his family that is dying. And you look at Elijah, who had a problem with depression, and you look at Moses, who went against God's will and stuck his staff right into the rock, and you look at Jonah, who not only didn't want to go preach, but once he got there, he wanted to see the whole city burn. He wanted to see all these people die. Like a very sadistic outlook on life. Like you look at these people, and they were not perfect people. But when you look at how they're portrayed in Sunday school, you forget that.
Yeah.
And it comes from really learning and appreciating. And Joseph was kind of a jerk.
I love that there was a lot of complexity with this movie, and I think people have trouble with the direction that they took the complexity with it. But the fact that they tried to put it in, I appreciated it. Whether you agree with it or not, or enjoyed it or not, the complexity was there, and it was important. And I think it's interesting that sometimes people will get upset with a movie like this that we don't know really that much about Noah. So people can take liberties with it. It's really not going to change that much. But people never get upset, and I understand it's an ownership thing, but we don't get upset when people will take stories that we do know about and completely change them. Lincoln came out last year. Great movie. One of the main states in that movie that was against the proclamation, to free the slaves and everything. In the movie, they were against it. In reality, they weren't. There was bastardization right there of our own history. The whole Mary Poppins movie, what is it called?
Saving Mr. Banks.
Saving Mr. Banks. Completely, the only thought that they had in that movie was to make Walt Disney look good. But in reality, Walt Disney was a bad guy and was a jerk and completely exploited that woman for his story that he wanted to tell so he could make money. But they made that movie and they bastardized the whole story so that it was just a fun, family-friendly get-together. But when a movie comes out like this, where actual thought and purpose was put into it, it gets all this controversy, which is completely unwarranted.
Yeah, and I think it's just a matter of ownership. Christians feel like they own it when they really don't. If anybody has a claim to it, it's the Jews because they wrote the Old Testament. But
And arguably, we could say that the Jews did make this movie because it is Hollywood.
Okay. But the Christians are up in arms because they feel like they own it. The Jews have a good reason to own it, and even the Muslims have a good reason to belong to it because Noah belongs to their religion as well. And the only real person who owns it is God. He's the only one who has the real right to make it. And I just feel like it's ridiculous.
If only we can get an interview with him on this.
Yeah, that would be pretty cool. But he sent some horrifying dreams in that movie. Some creepy stuff. So I don't see the reason why I see there's controversy is that there's a feeling of ownership. They feel like it's something was stolen from them. So they look at this movie and they say, this is mine, and I need to find a reason to dislike this movie. And so then all the other problems about this movie, all the other controversy basically stems from that problem. We really do not own the story. Christians, when I say we, Christians do not own the story of Moses. Jews do not own the story of Moses. Muslims do not own the story of Moses. It's like how nobody really owns the Bible. Humanity owns the Bible. It is our own story. It's our own autobiography, our dealings, our humanities, our shortcomings, what makes us good about us and what makes us bad about us. The truly bad Cain and Satan, in juxtaposition with what is truly good with Jesus Christ and why in the end God would save us. And I think those are the themes that the movie brings out. And so if you have a problem with the themes of this movie, you really have a problem with the themes of the Bible. Because in the end, Noah realizes that God saves people not because they're super wicked, and Noah through the entire movie, he's faced with all of this wickedness and all this evil, and in the end, you look at him, and he chooses, because that's how this movie sets up. He chooses to keep having humanity there, and it's that same way that God looks at all the evil, but he also sees all the good, and he loves us because we're there. And I don't mean to witness or anything like that, but I believe that if you go to this movie with an open mind, the themes as a Christian will touch you, but even as a person, and this is what I think is great about this movie, this story being told by an atheist, is that you can go there and you can see the goodness that is in humanity. Whether you're Christian, Jewish, Muslim, atheist, agnostic, Buddhist, you will see that in the end there's good in people.
Amen, brother. I don't know what I can say to that. No. I fully agree with you. I think that the movie was really greatly done. I mean, people got upset with the idea that it's called mythology rather than just a scriptural story. Yeah. But I mean, to other people who don't have the story, it is a mythology.
Well, Christians are in the minority of the world, so
so it is a mythology to other people, and I think it was well done. And I think you made some incredibly good points. So
to be noted, though, I have made a lot of hurtful comments about Christians. I would like to say that it's not that I do not like Christians because I am a Christian. I'm saying those things because I want there to be a change in the culture that is presented to the rest of the world. Because when I see it, I get sad that this is how we are viewed as a people.
Thank you very much. Watch our review of the movie. We'll have a link to it right here. Like, subscribe, and if you guys want to discuss this more, we will be on Facebook and on YouTube replying to comments, so just leave them below. Agree with us or disagree with us, however you want. We will see you next time.